Video game movies have been on an incredible streak lately, receiving consistent, albeit just barely, fresh percentages on Rotten Tomatoes, making the dreaded video game curse seem seemingly broken. When the trailers hit for Illumination's Super Mario Bros. Movie, it seemed like the polar opposite of the disastrous live-action movie from the 90s that made Nintendo hesitant to create any more movies based on their properties. Everyone got excited, the opening date got pushed forward 2 days, and then the critic review embargo lifted and the percentage turned out to be hit or miss, which is exponentially more approval than what the live-action film got, but nevertheless got audiences worried that they weren't going to enjoy it. Once the film was released though, audiences went wahoo for the film and started to wonder what it was about the film that critics didn't enjoy. My experience was more on the audience side, feeling like we couldn't have gotten a more perfect Mario movie if Lord Miller had helmed the director's chair, but at the same time I can understand why most critics didn't enjoy it. As much as I and audiences love the film, there is one thing that separates a good chunk of critics, not all, but some, from the audience that looks at the title and poster and races out to see this. The film, as perfect as it is for game enthusiasts, doesn't do much work to ease viewers who probably aren't familiar with the games into such a world, something that Nintendo was already infamous for bringing to the big screen experience in the past. The film, in an attempt to keep up with the sense of adrenaline that one typically gets from playing the games, takes zero time to slow down and let its world breathe, and as a result, jumps into a ton of elements that excite games fans but confuses everyone else, which is where a good chunk of critics stand. Just as an example, there's a scene where Mario and Luigi are in Brooklyn heading towards their first job as plumbers, and Mario, attempting to clear a path for Luigi, starts platform jumping. To gamers, this is a great nod towards the game that lets them know what sort of experience they're in for, but a critic is probably just sitting there confused as to why the camera work suddenly turns into this extra long shot and how a pudgy plumber is able to do this platform jumping. Like, did he become a gymnast before becoming a plumber? There's another scene where Mario is trying to follow Toad over to Peach's castle, and he has to hop on these floating brick platforms and acknowledges, okay, these bricks are just floating? To a fan of the games, this is a hilarious in-joke about how we just kind of accept these floating brick platforms and never question the physical nature of it. But a critic, you guessed it, does question the physical nature of it and doesn't appreciate how the film just skims over this extremely important and confusing little detail without much explanation. One last example is where Peach and Mario acquire the help of the Kongs. They spot a shortcut on the map back to the castle, and Cranky Kong just shouts, "We need carts!" To a fan of the game, this is an awe-inspiring moment because yes, we're getting nods towards Mario Kart in this movie. But a critic is probably sitting there wondering what made him immediately think that go-karts would be a smart idea when any method of flying would probably get them there faster. Also, if go-karts exist in this world, why did Peach, Mario, and Toad walk all the way to Kong World? The film does require a good amount of acceptance and suspension of disbelief to truly enjoy, as many of the physicalities, character motivations, and plot elements are simplified to allow for a ton of world building and zany action scenes. However, most gamers are willing to accept that aspect of it, not only because of the zany, Easter egg-filled fun that it has to offer in that regard, but because those strange physicalities and simple character motivations are something that many of them are used to from the games. Not only are a good chunk of critics not familiar with these skimmed elements, but because they spend a good chunk of their career watching a ton of movies, most of which already have these simplified and cliched plot elements, not only does that not give them a whole lot of time to pick up a controller, but it makes these simplified elements more annoying than enjoyable. Now again, this is coming from a guy who went crazy for this movie and enjoyed how simplified the elements that any other writer would probably overcomplicate to ease me into this wonderfully energetic world of zany action that translates to a video game experience on the big screen in a way that I've never seen before. But the truth is that a lot of critics aren't able to view this as a Mario movie, but instead just as a movie. And as a movie on its own, it has a ton of elements that don't add up, hence why many critics weren't very appreciative of the film. If you are familiar with the games and enjoy the experience that you got, don't let critics take that away from you, as despite the common belief, that's never their intention. However, just for the sake of imagining where critics are coming from, I suggest looking back at the film again, but with the mindset of someone who's never picked up a controller.